first of all, thank you for joining us. We're here to talk all about Tyrus's new, much acclaimed, much talked about memoir, Just Tyrus. Tyrus, I want to thank Premier Collectibles up front. We had some technical issues last week. They allowed us to come back today, and I think it's a good thing they did because, last week we spoke the day before your memoir came out.
Right.
And a lot has happened in the first week that we wouldn't have spoken about last week. Congratulations. You came on at number 1 on Amazon. It was there for days. Number 1 Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Books A Million. I mean, this book is hard to keep in stock. How does it feel your first week as an author to have to deal with these kinds of high-class issues?
Yeah, up until now, anytime I heard the word sellout, it was a bad thing. So now it's a good thing. It's still kind of surreal. I'm just kind of like, I'm just trying to figure it out. When you go through the process, and I've said this a million times, doing a book, when you're looking at yourself is kind of like therapy. So when it's finished and you're putting it out there, it's kind of like walking around town naked. And I don't know, with very few exceptions, too many people are comfortable with that because you're going to get a lot of looks, and you might not like all the looks you get. And so that's the best way I could describe it. Even giving a copy of my book to a friend, I know Kat Timpf, who I work with on the Gutfeld show, when I got my first box, I said, "Hey, got a second for an uncomfortable moment?" She was like, "Sure, what? And would you like my book?" Because I'm topless on it. So I mean, it's a little bit kind of like, and I struggle with it a little bit. But then once I started seeing reviews and stuff, and I started getting the numbers, and even the publishers and my agent, and you were, although I gotta say you were pretty confident from the time we were working together, this was going to be a special book. So you were right in that aspect. Everyone else was like politely, they were positive. They said, "Oh, I think it'll do all right." I think the goal for me was like, if I could break the top 500 in my first book, I thought that was a realistic goal. But I had no idea that it was going to be as big as it is now. And while we're talking, it continues to grow. I mean, we sold out, and that hurt our numbers in terms of like sales, because people go to buy it on Amazon and it says out of stock and we'll let you know when. Hey, if you don't see a due date, chances are you're not going to buy. But it also led to other outlets like Walmart and a lot of Premier Collectibles, because they had me sign like a million autograph things. It seemed like I'm still going to sign some books here in a minute. So we got enough for everybody. So it's really been just a shocking experience. And then all the love I'm getting from my coworkers at Fox, and understand that this book was published by Post Hill. This is not the big giant machine publication. Post Hill is more of a middle class working guy kind of a publisher. And so it's kind of cool that all the big boys are kind of scratching their head going, "Where's this guy coming from?" And
we're going to get to some of that because you had a very specific instance of that. I want to mention too, as Tyrus said, he's signing today. This is an online signing here from Premier Collectibles. So buy a book, Tyrus will sign it. We have questions of yours we're going to go to in just a little while. Tyrus, I appreciate you saying my hunch on what it was going to do, but I had a very sort of fortunate front row seat for this and kind of helping you writer to writer put your book together. I got to watch you go through the process. And to your point, one thing I want to talk to you about is there was a moment up front where you weren't sure how far to go with this, how much of your childhood to reveal, things you had never spoken about publicly, yet you confidently, ultimately, and courageously made the decision to tell some very hard stories. What was your turning point? What made you finally decide, yes, this is okay, yes, I can deal with whatever comes with this as a result?
I've struggled with that a lot. And that I took a lot of things out because I just wanted to tell a story, but I didn't want it to be like too heavy. And some of the things that I went through, looking now and getting reactions of other people, were a lot heavier than I thought. I think you kind of normalize your life when you look back on it, and you just assume that other people had very similar issues. And a lot of people did, but the reaction was shocking. But even all the way up to the time when the book was finished, and you're 2 weeks out, I started talking about not just stopping it. That I didn't think it was a good idea. That I thought it was going to be too much. And
Right.
and I thought, I don't want strangers coming up to me knowing me. Like, now I got to deal with that. Like, I didn't think it through and I got mad at you. I said that, I'm sitting there working on this with you, and I didn't realize that when it was over, it was like you and me were the only ones going to read it. I didn't realize that potentially half the country could read it. You just don't
Yeah.
think in those terms.
We had a good talk about that because,
yeah, because
again,
I found everything wrong. I was like, there's a period here when it should be a comma. Scrap the whole thing. It's not going to work.
yeah, you were looking for ways out of it, but like I said to you then, it's a common thing for
You did say that, yeah.
your first book, you feel that way. It's a good thing to feel that way. It means that you really did put stuff in there that matters and that's going to resonate with people. I want to read something really quickly because one of your colleagues, Dana Perino, read an early version of the book, devoured it, read it very quickly, right? And she right away wrote what I thought was one of the most thoughtful blurbs I'd read on any book. It says, "I loved Just Tyrus. I read it in one day and cheered for him when I got to the end. Tyrus has written a book that is at once raw, tender, intelligent, candid, and hilarious. Tyrus took a very rough start to his life and used perseverance, confident humility, and accountability to land firmly on his feet. What a triumph." She really did summarize the whole theme of your book. This was about persistence, resilience, tenacity. I mean, I was going to ask you when we started, do you ever think that little kid we started writing about hiding under the bed from a really dysfunctional family situation would ever grow up and write this book? But then I thought, wait a minute, of course he would. Because what I learned about that little kid working with you, it was a very tough little kid. You came out this way, ready for the fight, ready to take on whatever the world threw at you, right?
Yeah, and I didn't talk about it in the book because I forgot about it. But I was born. They had to use forceps to get me out, so I came into the world with a black eye. So I came out in a fight, and like I said, the second book I literally is going to be about the process of all of this. I think just writing a book and just rediscovering some things and expanding on some stuff. But and you don't realize how much of a fighter's mentality you have. And I think that's probably one of the things. But the other thing is that I never really bullshitted myself. I never really, you always say things to make yourself feel better, but I always had that voice that would be like, this is how it is, and you got to own this and no one else is going to fix it for you. And that's the one thing I did learn in my childhood is that the only person who can make things better for me is me. And you got to figure things out. And,
well, you confronted those things. I mean, you really, you took us through some really hard situations, but then commingled throughout the book. There's also a lot of fun stuff and a lot of crazy stuff. I think you could almost write a whole book just about your days as a bouncer in the LA club scene in the 90s. That's a whole other universe with really interesting characters, really interesting.
Oh yeah, there's some interesting characters
and conflicts.
It was some. Like I said, I think a lot of the reason why I have so many stories is I've moved around so much. Mm-hmm. And, that was one thing in the book that you noticed, like I moved everywhere. I mean, I started out in Lynn, Massachusetts, and I was in California, went to school in the middle of Nebraska, and then, was just everywhere, and then traveled the world as a bodyguard, as a wrestler. I've been, pretty much everywhere with very few exceptions. And so you see a lot of things, you absorb a lot of things, but not having roots, the negative side of it is you don't have, like when I say roots, like you grow up in your neighborhood and you've known the same people for 10 years and,
right.
You went to the same school and, you grew up with everybody. And the negative thing about not having roots is you don't have that. But the positive thing about not having roots is you have way more life experiences. Because I know one at a book signing, a guy said, "You're too young to write a memoir. Why did you write a memoir?" And I was like, bruh, I've lived more lives in 20 years than you probably have in your entire life. And he's like, why
is that? You've squeezed a lot in.
No,
yeah.
I just traveled more than you. And he was like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. So growing isn't, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think good memoirs, there are always a couple of moments in a great memoir where things turn. For you, I think one of those moments is a night in a club where somebody from in the pro wrestling world watches you deal with a troublemaker. And in that moment, they didn't just watch you clear somebody out. They got a sense of your personality, of your character, and they were intrigued by you. Talk a little bit about that, because for me, without that incident, your life could have taken a much different turn. It's a big moment that night, isn't it?
Tommy Dreamer, who was a Hall of Famer and a legend from ECW and the WWE, and he at the time was the head of talent in the WWE. So he decides, he goes out and he hires guys. He looks for talent, and it was WrestleMania 21 in LA, and the wrestlers and him showed up to Saddle Ranch after doing some film stuff, and I recognized
Saddle Ranch was a big popular club where you were one.
Yeah, Saddle Ranch was the spot. It was the Wild Wild West. We would have about 1,300 people on a Friday and Saturday. I'm talking like women dancing on tables, guys thinking it's the old West. We had fist fights every night. It was like Roadhouse in the beginning before Patrick Swayze got there, but it was still like a fun place to be at the same time. So, unlike Roadhouse, no one ever said to me they thought I'd be taller. So that's one nice thing. But and me and my crew, we ruled that place with an iron fist. And we didn't have headsets because we were all, I think the shortest guy in my crew was like 6'6". So we could see across the mass of people and make eye contact. And Tommy and them were standing in line, and I'm a wrestling fan. I've been watching wrestling my whole life. And I was like, hey, that's Tommy Dreamer. So I gave him the VIP treatment. And I'll see at the Saddle Ranch, they would have stages because some nights we have concerts and stuff in there. But when they didn't, they made a VIP, like a bottle service table where you would sit on the stage and you'd like overlook the dance floor and stuff, which would be packed usually. And so I put Tommy and his group of wrestlers up on that stage so they could, they wouldn't get bothered by the people, but still could interact and all that stuff. And while I was up there, just briefly talking to Tommy, just like, hey, if you need anything, the waitress is here and this, that, whatever, first round's on me. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for enjoy your show. And I walked down and I went to my post, which was on the other side. And I was chilling, and all of a sudden, Tommy Dreamer's right next to me. He's like, what's up? I was like, what's up? And he's like, is this what you do? I said, yeah. He's like, what are you doing? I said, you ever seen a lion in the field? I'm watching gazelles waiting for someone to mess up. And then I go get them. And he's like, can I do it with you? I was like, yeah, why not? And during that time, there was a commotion in the middle of the dance floor. So it would be like, it was a lot of times what ends up happening is girls band together for protection from all of the guys who are trying to hit on them. So they all form like these groups of like 8, and they all dance like a little circle, and it's impenetrable. No guy can get in there because you can't, if you ask one, they all stop, and then you're like an idiot. So you have to keep moving. So it's a very good defensive move that women use when they just want to dance and have a good time. And the guys kind of form circles around them, waiting for one of them to separate from the group, and then they can go hit on her or whatever. But the girls would be dancing, and one of them would just disappear, and like the head would just disappear. And I was like, I looked and I didn't notice it. And then she'd come up and she would be pretty frazzled, pretty upset. Then another one would disappear and then pop up. And I was like, what is going on over there? So I walked through the crowd to where it was at, and the girls they were slapping at these 2 short guys, I guess midget, small people, whatever you call them. And they were basically coming up behind the girls and pulling them down the dance floor and like trying to like hug on them and stuff. Like they thought it was funny. And I just looked down at the 2 guys, which I had no choice because I'm 6'8", and I was just like, hey, fellas, listen. Whatever you're doing, stop. Cut it out. Just stop it. The girls don't want to dance with you. Don't do that. If you do it again, I'm going to throw you out. And as I was leaning towards one of them, the other one took a swing at me, and like this little hand just punched me in the stomach. And I was like, did you just hit me? And while he was getting ready to tell me no, as I turned my head, the other one hit me. And I was like, did you? And it was just a reaction. And I just grabbed them by the little heads and clacked their heads together. And they both went out. It was over. Took the little headers. And one of the things I used to do was when the person was out of line, I used to sleep them. So one of the nicknames I had in the club was Sandman, because you put them to sleep, a guy goes to sleep, and they're real easy to get out the club. And I was good at doing it with one arm because I get my bicep under their chin, a little squeeze, and then, they're out for 3 seconds, reboot, and they casually walk out. So these dudes were down, so it's called the suitcase, where I pick them up by the belts and walk them out like suitcase. So I'm walking them out like 2 kegs, and again, this isn't like a tremendous battle. I mean, these guys, I was taller than both these guys put together, but it had to be done. They tried to put hands on me. So I was in the right, and I walked him out and dumped him out. And as I turned around, Tommy Dreamer was like, "You have to do that on TV. Like, you have to do that on TV. I've never seen anything like that." He goes, and the part is like how you're smiling the whole time, like you just, were you making jokes? I said, well, I'm carrying. Yeah, it is a joke. Like, it is a joke. So,
but he got it. He looked at you and he got you. And again, it's one of those moments where if he wasn't there that night, that leads all of a sudden. Now you've got a pathway in to WWE, and that starts that phase of your career. The way you described that, it's another example of, one of many great stories in your memoir, and just how you tell a story. This is coming out of a childhood, Tyrus. Every great memoir also needs an antagonist. Somebody that creates a lot of conflict in your life. Before you became that bouncer, there was somebody in your life. We call him Craig in the book, and he really stands for, I think, every bully, every dysfunctional father or father figure in a household. And you had years worth of abuse at this guy's hands. It's what a lot of people are reacting to in the book, just how you survived a lot of that. Talk about that too, because when you and I were working on this, there were things you weren't sure about sharing, but then I think you felt like, you know what, it's liberating. If I can get this off my chest, maybe I can deal with it better. And I think it became therapy for you as well to get this stuff out. Is that fair?
Yeah. The one thing about the Craig situation was that in life, I was able to have my day in the sun with him. And a lot of times, you don't get that. The abuser maintains a hold on you for most of your life. And I hear that a lot with people who wish they would have had the day that I had when I had had enough. And luckily for me, at the time, I was like 6'4" and 270 pounds, and I had had enough. And not everyone gets that. So, but you still, I think where I was different is that a lot of my issues happened before because I was put in a role that I could never be successful in. Like my mother and I were more like friends than we were mother and son because of her age and the traumatic stuff we went through with my biological father. So when she got married to this individual, it wasn't just that I lost my mother, I lost my best friend. So it was a lot to deal with. And this is where you get unrealistic expectations as the kid. Like when you think you're the man of the house and you're 10 years old, 11 years old, you have a complete distortion of what the world is because you live in a very small bubble. And my mom worked nights and I was in charge of taking care of my brother. And even if she did have a babysitter, I was still kind of in charge. And, and I carried the groceries in and I had responsibilities and I checked the doors in the lock and I mowed the lawn. Like I was the little man of the house, and I sat at the head of the table, like it was a thing. I was important. And then when that replacement, when he came in, all those things were stripped from me. Now I'm supposed to be a son. And I had no clue how to do that, nor the inclination. I didn't trust this guy. I don't like this guy. I talked about how we met. And we met in the worst way possible. He was just in underwear on my couch, and I was supposed to spend that at a friend's house, but they didn't have Captain Berry Crunch, which is my favorite cereal in the world. So I skipped breakfast there to come home and get my Captain Berry Crunch. And not only did I not get my Captain Berry Crunch, there was some captain sitting on my ship that wasn't supposed to be there. So we didn't get off to a good start, and we never really did. But in challenging him with my unrealistic expectation that I was just going to fight and get my spot back, and physically couldn't match up. And, that first time that I was hit in the stomach by him and really felt like a man's punch at 11 or 12 years old or whatever it was, did unbelievable damage to my psyche because I was a tough kid in school and I got fights with guys. I could fight guys like 2 age groups above me and stuff. And that's kind of like who I was. Like, don't mess with him. And even being light skinned and mixed, people wouldn't talk shit to me because they didn't want to get hands put on.
Right.
In that one moment, he took everything from me. I now all of a sudden was a coward. I had been beaten, like, but I didn't look at it like he never should have been putting his hands on me in the first place, you know, and that I shouldn't feel bad about myself or be angry at myself that I got whooped. But I looked at it like that because I wasn't a child anymore. I was an adult man and wanted to be with no real directions or teachings or anything, and I was just lost. And for years, I was lost and just was scared of my own shadow for the first time in my life because I thought I was this powerful guy, but I wasn't. I was just 11-year-old. So it was that to me was the hardest thing. And I kept trying to get that back. And that's why there was so many, like, no, I'm not responsible for any time he put hands on me. He was wrong every time he took a swing
Right, of
at a
course.
child, straight up. But like, I looked at it as I kept going back because I kept getting stronger. Like it took 2 punches to get me down today.
Well, you definitely, throughout the course of your book, stacks of which are behind you. And folks, thank you for joining us here at Premier Collectibles. Tyrus is signing books today for you. We have questions in just a minute. But you took all the negative energy and you harnessed it into something positive for yourself. I think that's another theme in your book, is not
Yeah.
only did it not break you, but you found a way to actually use it later as a reminder of what not to do and how to take strength from it. I mean, I think that really for me is that's what I learned most about you throughout the course of the book, is like learning about this guy who actually turned these things into an advantage for himself. You didn't let it break you. You let it get you stronger, which is a great lesson. It can be done.
You
Tyrus, a
know,
couple of
and
questions here from
okay.
some folks here. Um, Cheryl in New Haven, Michigan says, I enjoyed your fish tank while you work from home. Do you have a pond with fish outside your house? Now, I want to just preface that I learned your love of fish is special, and your connection to tending to fish, looking after them, is a really big deal in your life. Answer Cheryl, if you wouldn't, talk a little bit about your passion.
No, I do not have a pond in my backyard because I live in Louisiana and the damn hurricanes and birds would knock out my fish pretty quick. But I do have giant fish tanks, and where they're safe and sound, and I don't have to worry about an egret getting fat on my Indonesian cichlids. So, would I like a pond? Yeah, but I have to build a screen. Trust me, I'm marinating on it. I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe if I can sell a few more books, I'll do it. But I got to get a big screen top, and then I got to figure out what I want to put in there. So it's a whole whatnot. And then because I like sitting in front of the fish tank so much, my other concern is being in a pond. I won't be able to observe as much as I can because that's really where the connection comes. And people are like, fish have connections. Yeah, they do. They know who you are. They know who you're not. They know who feeds them, and they're like with my daughter, every time she comes by the fish tank, it's like the Aquaman movie. They all just circle around her because they know she's the one that overfeeds. So, it's like a little thing. And then I'll be like, go stand over there. And she'll stand at different tanks and the fish will all swarm around her. And it's like, it's really cool.
Tyrus, there were a couple of times during the book where you had things going on, reliving some stories, it was causing you some pain, and you were telling me how watching the fish really became your therapy. A film came up that we both really love a lot called Mr. Limpet in 1964 with Don Knotts, where he becomes essentially, he's a bookish guy who falls in the water and he becomes a fish. He finds his new life as a fish. And you told me just what that movie meant to you as a kid and how it still resonates, that you really feel like that character at times, right?
Yeah. And I used to watch that. I think it came on KCLA Channel 5 on Sundays. It was like a rerun. It was like
Right.
Godzilla movies and like Kung Fu
Creature
movies.
feature, right?
Yeah. And then that came on and I was like, oh, and I remember he wished he was a fish.
I
And I
wish
was
I
like
was a
thinking like
fish.
how
That's
cool
right.
that was. And if I could just be a fish, I wouldn't have to deal with my issues and I could get away. I kind of missed the point on that. And it's funny, eventually I got to the point where he chose a whole new life instead of going back to
Right.
his life. And unfortunately, that wasn't going to work for me. I didn't have that option. But the idea of it, finding something to get involved in, because shortly after that, I had my first fish tank. And then once I got my fish tank, it was like the noise wasn't as loud. When I got sent to my room, like, go to your room, you're not watching TV tonight. I was watching my fish all night. So I kind of won, it was like I didn't have to be around. I didn't have to share all the spaces with him as much because I would be in my room with my fish tank. I was always be in my room, and the control over the TV, like what you could watch or what you could not watch, or just sharing space with him would have me on edge all the time. So I didn't. So the fish was a great escape for me, and I think a healthy one in terms of like it gave me something to focus on, and it
Right.
also gave me kind of a fix with my whole wanting to protect things and because I was my mom's protector. That was my role. And I wasn't able to do that anymore. But with them, I have to make sure their water's clean. I have to make sure they have lots of air and they got food and they got enough room
Made
and
you
space.
responsible. Yeah, it gave
So
you
it was
something
a
to be
huge
responsible on.
responsibility. And I liked having responsibility.
There's Bradley, New Albany, Ohio asks, what did you think of your WWE run? What did you like about it, and what didn't you like about it?
Um, the only thing I didn't like about my WWE run was probably when it was over. I grew a lot in that Funkasaurus character. And my issues I was constantly frustrated by guys in front of me because I felt that I was one of the best, especially on the mic, and I just wanted more time to do my thing. And I was never comfortable with being putting in my place, which then you become a headache. And I became a headache. So I think if I would have been just satisfied with the great role they had for me, but it wasn't a championship role, I'd probably still be there. But I didn't. And I didn't always show my frustration in the right way. I became very closed off and only spoke when spoken to, and typically you didn't like what you heard back, and very distanced myself from everybody. So when I was let go, I think it was more of a message than anything else that I needed to change some things. But I took it as I'm going to reinvent myself, and since you didn't believe I was a top guy, I'll show you I'm a top guy, and I'm a great entertainer, and I think I accomplished that so far. So it's one of those things where you take a huge because at this point I was ready to bet and believe in myself, and I just was not comfortable being the guy who opened the shows and got other guys ready for championships because I was very good at that. But sometimes when you're real good at things, they will stop your growth from doing other things. Like, man, this guy is great at building cars, so let's not make him the foreman. Let's keep him building cars, even though he could be a great foreman. And I
Right.
was like, no, I'm going to go do my own thing, and you guys will hear from me. And now they see me. So
Pam in Las Vegas asks, or she says, really enjoy your and respect your point of view and comments whenever I see or hear you, Tyrus. Who in your life outside of your family has had the biggest impact on your life, family, and career?
um, I've been fortunate to have a lot of good role models, and I think if I had to say somebody who, in terms of my voice and saying what's on my mind, without question, that have been the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, when he was my trainer slash coach. I spent probably more times in the office with him, making him tell me about his time back in the day on the road and stuff. And he always would be like, "You need to talk in front of the camera like you talk to me in the office, and like you talk around the boys, like you own the place, and you need to be like that." And he gave me great advice. Was actually the last conversation we ever had. Was that he knew that I was frustrated. He knew that he probably knew I was going to get let go any day now. And I was there to roll around, and he shows up, and he loved Neil Diamond. Oh man, this dude loved Neil Diamond, and so he's playing Neil Diamond, and I am. I'll put it this way: I am not a Neil Diamond fan. Um, Although I do like, who doesn't like, Sweet Caroline? I'm a Red Sox fan, so
Well, right. You got
of
to love
course,
that.
but with few exceptions, that's it. But he told me he made me get out of the ring, and he sat me down, and he sat a lot closer to me than normal. I thought he was gonna do something silly, and we usually had a smirk on his face, and he just looked me in the eyes and he said, "I need you to paint your own canvas." And I didn't know what that meant. I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "No matter what happens, you haven't painted your canvas yet. Haven't done what you need to do yet. And if it's not here, it's not here. But you're not doing what I trained you to do. You're not who I thought you would be, and you need to paint your own canvas." And I didn't really understand that. And I thought, well, I mean, my matches are good. Like you just sometimes someone gives you in this case, it was the last conversation we ever had. And then he hugged me, which again was weird. We didn't usually do that very much. And I said, all right, thanks, coach. And he's like, and you still owe me a check because your whole career, you are me. And, I'm the one who danced with you for an hour. And I was like, it's coming, boss. Just check your mailbox, and that was the end of the thing. And then I think when this book came out, I'm pretty sure that I told you that I had painted my canvas. So
Yeah.
that was one of those things where you look back on it and he had saw more for me than I saw myself. I just wanted to be a really good wrestler and I wanted to be a United States champion. I didn't even care about the WWE World Championship. I wanted to be the United States champion because he was the United States champion. And his version of the championship was gone. He never held the WWE title. So it wasn't important to me. But he was the United States champion. And he also was the World Television Championship, which when the NWA called, that was the title I went after. And he was the first guy to hold this, and I'm holding it right now, and it means the world to me. Until somebody can take it from me.
He's a great character in the book. A lot of the people in the book, some of the more negative influences, you learn something from. You sort of do what they didn't do, but he was somebody who mentored you, and you actually were replicating what he did. Somebody else in the book that I think comes off as a great positive character is Snoop Dogg, who you worked for a number of years as a bodyguard. He contributed to the back of your book, and Snoop said, George, aka Tyrus, aka the realest, most blunt human being on the face of planet Earth, never had a problem telling you what was on his mind or how he felt, good or bad. Tough exterior, but a heart of gold. Frontliner, great friend, and excellent coach for my youth football team. His work ethic is obvious, taking him from football to bodyguard to pro wrestler to a superb personality on Fox News. I've seen him climb the ladder of success, and I'm happy that I was along for the journey. I mean, again, you meet him because somebody sees you doing what you do in clubs. They've got to have you. But you guys develop a very special work relationship that ultimately isn't about bodyguarding as much as it is coaching as youth football. That's really, it seems like, where you become friends with him. Because what I love in your book, and Just Tyrus, as a bodyguard, you're very clear about what a bodyguard's role is. You can't be a fanboy. You can't be distracted by anything, right? It's all about keeping your eye on that prize, right?
Right. Yeah. And you, unfortunately, or you can't be friends.
Right.
You cannot be
Because
friends.
then you lower your guard, right?
Yeah. And then you become part of the show. And none of Snoop's success is mine. Now, his shine, his spotlight, you might get some of the light on you because you're standing 3 to 5 feet away from him every day, but that's not yours. And nothing will end a bodyguard sooner than him thinking he's part of the show, and that he is more important or just as important as the guy that you are getting paid to, in some cases, take a bullet for. I mean,
Right.
you are basically saying this individual is more important than my being, and it's my job to protect him. So there is a bond there, but it has to be one of you can be fond of your client as I was, but I never smoked a joint with Snoop. It would have been inappropriate. Um, I never was with him when I wasn't being paid. So those were things that, and when I had a break, I didn't hang out at the house. I was gone. I did my own thing, like you're supposed to. When we were coaching, he was the head coach, and anyone who's a position coach knows the head coach is a pain in the ass. So, and K-Mac, who was the defensive coordinator and co-head coach, him and I had a bond, and him and I talked stuff, but we we never went and told Snoop what to do. Snoop would tell us something, and we both look at each other like, that's not going to work. But we didn't say anything, and then if we'd change it or tweak it, and if it worked, he'd be like, that's what I'm talking about. And if it didn't work, he would be like, who the hell? So, but there's a bond there, but you have to, if you're going to be in executive protection, you cannot become part of the show. Because if you do, one day you're going to get caught slipping. And I've seen it happen. I've seen bodyguards that were too cool. They have their own little fan base. They're checking their phone every minute. Every time there's a bunch of groupies trying to get backstage, they're taking phone numbers and all that stuff. And then while you're doing that, something bad's going to happen.
I don't want to give away too much in the book. There's another great story about something that happens with Prince one night in a club that I think you'll
Yeah,
be
I'm
enjoy.
not talking about. You got to read that one because I
That's
still
right.
struggle with that one. That was not a good look for me.
Tyrus, another question from Shirley in Naples. She says, "When did you first become interested in politics and why?"
So again, I have to go back to the WWE and Glenn Jacobs, aka Kane, would a lot of times come in the locker room and talk to us about saving money and taking care of stuff. And he's a libertarian, I believe. And we would start just talking stuff. But honestly, when Barack Obama got into politics, I think everybody was talking about it. And John and I actually I met John McCain in Phoenix when I was bodyguarding for Snoop, and I just kind of started getting involved in like reading more, looking into stuff because you would see things happening on TV, and depending on which channel you watch, you get a very different story. So I became a little more curious than the average guy, and I started every time someone would say something, I try to look it up and research it to see what was what and what was not, and I was very surprised by all the one-sidedness and like how ridiculous it was. Like, how are you getting things accomplished if you're always arguing with each other or going after each other? So I started becoming very aware of like uh, political stuff and looking at my identity and what I was going to be in politics because I don't like big government, and I never was on welfare. My mother was never on welfare, and she could have several times, but I always felt like once you start getting handouts, it's very easy not to start doing other things. Handouts aren't always a good thing. Hand ups are, but handouts I don't believe are a good thing because it makes you comfortable where you are, and that's just my opinion. There'll be some people will argue that thing, but that's just where I'm at with that. But and in the locker room talks, we would talk about things and we would argue about stuff but in the right way. We'd have debates and stuff and we start paying attention and we're all paying taxes now. And the more taxes you pay, the more Republican you become. It's like when you start out in politics, everyone's Democrat and they start making money and you start seeing your taxes every time when your paycheck go away, your behind is going to end up being a Republican because you want small government. You don't want anybody in your pocket and you want an opportunity to grow and take care of your family. I mean, that's about as Republican as it gets. Now, you can add all the other bells and whistles to it, but break it down, that's basically where it is. And that's why I'm a Republican. It has nothing to do with suits and conservative this and that or whatever. It has everything to do with what I feel is best for my family and my bottom line.
Tyrus, when you talk about, think about your time on Fox now, I've really enjoyed in the last week, talking about Just Tyrus, your new memoir, your colleagues on Fox from Dana Perino, who we mentioned, who wrote the beautiful book for your book, Greg Gutfeld, Judge Deneen, Brett Baer, everyone you've been talking to is kind of coming at it from a different angle, very enthusiastic, very passionate, very supportive of you. What's it been like for you there at work, having everybody that you work with be so effusive about what you wrote about, how you wrote about it, and just how they've embraced it?
I gotta be honest. It's very well. It's like I'm pleasantly shocked. Surprise isn't a big enough word. It's not just that, because people say, "Oh, I'm going to read your book," but they don't really read your book, And then but they're reading it, and not only they're reading it, then they want to talk about it, and which I was surprised. And then Brett Baer says on national TV, "How do I get Tyrus on?" I'm shocked. I mean, this Brett Baer, like this dude's like Walter Cronkite, man. He's talking about real news, and so when they asked me to be on there, and I do TV all the time, but I was nervous. And then you got Brett Baer puts his glasses on, starts reading a quote, and then you think, oh, it's a hit piece. You know what I'm saying? You're like, because he does that when he's about to ruin somebody's day. You're here, Senator, is this and this, but your fiduciary track shows you voted the other way. And I was like, and so
I didn't even think about that when the glasses come on.
Once the glasses come on, he's about to ruin your day. But I didn't know that he tried to Dana Perino me. So Dana Perino was always trying to get me to cry on TV. Like that's her go-to move. When she named Tyrus after me, the dog and stuff, and she was like sliding a box of tissues. And I'm like, it's not happening. So quit trying. But I was like, wow, that's a big deal. Brett Baer's reading my book. That's a big deal. And not only that, but asking a genuine question because he read it. And that meant a lot to me, especially when you look at me and not just skin color, but my hat's backwards. I got a collar on today. I don't know how you caught me with that one, but I'm who I am, and I'm very different than just about everybody here in terms of like what you see on TV. But no one has ever said to me, "Hey, if you put a suit on, you'll get more bookings," or "Take the hat off and do this," or "Hey, don't say that and be that." And the fact that um, not only am I being accepted by my peers, but I'm being appreciated and put up on their platform, and they're sharing their stage with me without. It's not mandatory. I'm not. My book is with Post Hill. Post Hill is not Fox News publisher. So it's actually counterproductive if you think about it.
Yeah.
They should be pushing, and I'm just saying, but they're doing it because they generally
Well,
like
it's very organic. I think
book.
the whole
Yeah.
thing is
So I
very
guess that's
organic.
what my point is that everyone who's doing this isn't because they're getting a rundown with, "Hey, you got to push Tyrus's book today." Every person that has had me on their show to do an interview about my book has come up to me and asked me because they read the book. And
Right.
that is very humbling.
Well, in just a week, you've got about 1,000 Amazon reviews, reader reviews that I think, I've been looking at those, and they're incredible because people are, to your point, they're reading the book and they're responding in this very visceral way. They're very touched by it. They're very moved by it. It's all very emotional. People are getting caught up in the emotional, this not just the struggle, but the triumph, the coming out as you did at the other end of it, not just in one piece, but thriving.
Right.
And the reaction, again, whether it's been at Fox with your colleagues or just people who are reading the book, it's been uniformly very positive, and everyone's been very, very moved by it. And again, it's the sign of a strong memoir. I think because primarily you were honest, you didn't run from stuff, there's stuff in there that does not make you look good, but you own it. You talk about what you learn from it, and you move on. And a lot of times with celebrity memoirs, they sort of people will dance around the harder parts, but you lay them right out there. And I think that's
Well, yeah, because I don't look at myself as a celebrity. So that's, celebrities are annoying. So they are. I was a bodyguard forever.
yeah.
I was an offensive lineman, like listen to a quarterback talking about himself. I'm like, fool, you wouldn't be breathing right now if it wasn't for me. But O-line doesn't get any respect. So I'm popular. I'll say I'm very popular. But
Well,
as far as
you
being a
mentioned
celebrity,
you mentioned football, and again, there's stuff in your book that's I love the college football stuff. I think it's a big part of your being, is what it was like for you being on the line, like you just said. We have a question here from Mary in Washington State. Knowing that you played football in college, what's your take on how college and especially pro football has become so politicized today?
I hate it. Honestly, I think it takes away from what goes on in the field, and we need to get back to being able to have two thoughts and be able to prioritize things. Like when we all go to the game, we're there to support the team. We're not there to push an agenda. But I think because politics has become sport-esque in terms of like you pick your team and you're that, and then when you represent your team 24/7 and wherever you go, you feel like you got to say, "Oh, I'm a Jets fan," which is amazing in itself to be a Jets fan. But anyway, and I'm a diehard Republican, and you need to know that. And and then people go, "Well, I'm this and that," and it just sets the wrong stage. Like, there's no place for politics in sports.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, though, when a athlete uses his celebrity to be a citizen, and I think that's fine. I think it's just a fine line. Um, but you don't do it in season. You do it on your own time. You become an advocate on your own time. And I think you can one or two. It's not shut up and dribble. It's not shut up and play ball. They're role models, whether they like it or not. And if they're going to speak on something, I think that's fine. But they should keep it off the field or off the court, in my opinion.
Agreed. Tyrus, here's one from John in Russellville, Arkansas. He says or asks, "You've had a very successful career in many areas. What about your success has surprised you the most?"
People's reactions. People coming up to me and talking about my substance opposed to my size. That to me has probably been the most surprising thing, is how much people talk to me about the things I say or the things I do in the ring, opposed to like, "Well, how big are you? You'd be look bigger on TV. Let me see your hands," stuff like that. But it's more about substance, and that's pretty cool.
And then one from Brian in Denton, Texas. Your most memorable match and why getting to wrestling?
My most memorable match. Wow, that's a great one. I've had a few. I'd probably have to say Biloxi, Mississippi, wrestling Sandow on a house show, sold out. I think it was like 10,000 people in there, and him and I blew the doors off it, and it was literally the best way I could describe it. It was Dusty Rhodes and a Ric Flair kind of match, and he had me in a figure four leg lock, and as I reversed it, the place was going nuts. I mean, it was just crazy. And I remember we were supposed to go with 7 minutes, and we ended up going 12. And but when we came on the thing, Arn Anderson was waiting, and he goes, "That's how you be a player right there." He goes, "That you did something tonight. They're going to be talking about this for years." And it was a monumental match. And I've had a lot of great ones. The second one would be me and T.J. Wilson in Mexico. Same thing happened, and that was one of those matches that when you wrestle T.J. Wilson, who's probably him or Cesaro is probably the two most technically sound wrestlers of my generation. You wrestle TJ, they would call TJ and be like, "Is the kid, is he any good?" That's how good TJ Wilson is. And me and him finished, and we trained together, so I kind of had inside advantage because people didn't realize how good I was, because they always think big guy, big guy. But we came through, and you got main eventers going, "Who's following that?" These guys stole the show tonight. And then when they called him, he was like, "Don't ask me, ask him. I'll work him anytime." And that was the stamp of approval that I needed, that I was playing at a high level in wrestling. So those would probably be the two biggest standout matches in my career.
Excellent. Stephen in Seaford, New York. Hey, Tyrus, big fan. What's the meaning of your hand greeting when you're introduced on the shows you're on? Thanks.
Win. It's a W.
Simple
All I do
enough.
is win.
Another one here. Rick in Eagle River, Wisconsin. Tyrus, we love you up here in the North Woods of Wisconsin. Just wondering what your favorite or last meal would be. Favorite restaurant on the planet?
Oh, that's easy. And well, I don't really have vegan or woke fans, so it would be Dominic's restaurant, the Italian restaurant I went to when I was a kid, and it'd be veal parm with an orange soda.
Sean in California, in Los Angeles, is wondering, you spent a lot of time in California growing up. What are a couple of your favorite spots in the state to visit when you come back?
Venice Beach, California, Gold's Gym is my favorite place to be, and that's where my weightlifting stuff and wrestling career really took off. And my buddy Rico, and then I love the Beverly Hills Hotel. I love the cabanas. I love hanging out there, and I like that's probably my favorite hotel when I do come home. But yeah, Venice Beach is my spot. And anytime I go to Sloss and Swap Meet, I'm a happy dude.
Tyrus, in the book, we talk a lot about when you're coaching football with Snoop, you were working with kids even before that in kind of almost like a camp setting with what you went to college for, dealing with kids. I've heard a lot of people comment on this book, wondering if you'd ever think about writing something to a youth market to talk about survival, resilience, getting over things that are happening today in their lives. Have you ever thought about how you might be able to take some of your points of view and adapt those into something for young adults?
Well, I actually, before all of this started, I was working on a kid's book. I think I sent Myra the pictures to it, and she was like, "Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll figure it out." And a lot of it, I wanted to try to be a writer, to see or an author, to see if I could pull it off. And now, so far, so good. We still got ways to go, but I want to write more. I definitely want to finish the kids' book I started. I mean, the illustrations are pretty cool, so I might as well do something with it. And I think the thing about kids' book is it needs to be information that they don't have to do homework on, if that makes any sense. And it needs to be realistic things, not fake things, not making up unrealistic issues. You have to be honest, and it has to be relatable, and you can't write about anything you haven't gone through to a kid. They'll see right through that. So every time I see someone writing a self-help book for kids and they came from a silver spoon in their mouth with none of those real issues, it falls on deaf ears. You have to reach them out, and they have to believe what you're saying, and kids see right through that. They know somebody who's like, you can't ghostwrite a kid's book if you're trying to tell them how to live, uh, or give them strength or something to believe in, because they'll see right through it. Because if they're looking for a book for that, they've already been bullshitted enough. So
Right.
they're becoming, as a kid, you become an expert on liars. The difference is you don't call them out. You just get ready. It's like in my book, I talk about phone calls. Oh, you can call me anytime. That to me was goodbye.
Well, you come, listen, like I said, you come very clean in your book. You're very honest, brutally honest. And I think what readers take away and what they're relating to is the fact that you don't run from things that you did in your life that you regret. You learn from them, and that's the lesson, because we've all got those things in our life. I mean, yours may be a little more extreme, but that lesson that you can learn from them, I think, is very powerful and very potent. I think it's another reason why your book is resonating. One more question here, Tyrus, from a reader. From Daryl in Claysville, Pennsylvania. Who was your favorite historical leader, and who do you believe was our best president for the ideals of a self-governed nation?
Oh, it's Frederick Douglass, um, and his relationship with Abe Lincoln. Abe Lincoln, I think, is fascinating, and I would challenge anyone to read it. I think Ryan Kilme's got a great book. I
Yeah.
strongly suggest you guys read it, um, where it talks about the relationship with Frederick Douglass and Abe Lincoln and how it helped reconstruct after the Civil War. There's a lot of good things. Those guys. Who is the greatest president? That's a tough one. I think you can't. First of all, you can't judge a president until at least, I think, 10 or 15 years after the
At
presidency to
least,
truly
yeah.
judge. So I think at this point, uh, I know the president. I can tell you this. I know the president I want to have a beer with, and that's George Bush the second. That dude. I think we could sit down and have some fun conversations. And
Something tells me you'll do that, and it'll be
yeah,
in a book.
that would be the guy. Barack Obama, President Donald Trump. It's not been long enough to really look back at their accomplishments to see um, where it ranked in terms of history and stuff, especially with all the with the Senate causing havoc on presidencies and
Yeah.
really hamstringing presidents. You know, if the president's not from my party, I'll do everything I can to impeach him in some cases or derail his program, which I think has really hurt the country. That's
Yeah.
why I'm such a big proponent of term limits, so we can get some of these guys out, so presidents can actually do their job. But yeah, I'll go with George Bush for now. Probably Ronald Reagan would be another guy that I'd strongly push. Bill Clinton was pretty good too, like either or. Um, but I'll just go with who I want to have a beer with, and I would like to have a beer with George Bush the second.
Well, Tyrus, as we kind of wrap up here, any parting thoughts that you've got about your book? I mean, it's I know it's been a really exciting first week for you. I think it's going to continue. I mean, you obviously have a lot more stories to tell, more books to write. But what is it? What's the first week leave you feeling now? Are you excited? Are you anxious to share more? Does it make you hold back? Like what is it like for you right now today as we talk about it?
I am just kind of enjoying the moment, and there's very few times you get to sit at the mountain, you can take a breath, you know, and it's like this was one of those moments where you're like, I set forth something, I accomplished it, and the win was finishing the book. And all this is house money, as I like to say, and you and I are playing with house money, 50% actually house money, um, but the point is I really am also like, now that I kind of get the game and see the results of I can learn from my mistakes from the first book, focus on the thing, and I'm excited to get to work on another one. So yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm very proud of you. I mean, again, on a personal note, watching you go through what you did in terms of personal discovery, unpacking things you hadn't thought about for a really long time, and then confronting them. I got to see it every day, and it was really, you were very brave and you're very honest, and that I could almost write a book about watching that, because
Right.
watching you find your story and develop your story was really exciting. And I think that's why I was so confident in what it would do, is because I got to watch you voice these things in some cases for the first time. And they were so electric and explosive and life changing that it's hard to imagine people not being moved by it. So congratulations, my friend.
And I would just say one thing real quick. I think everyone, whether you get it published or not, I think everyone who possibly can should write a book about themselves, because it's really therapeutic, and you're not going to lie to yourself. When you put it to pen and paper, if you are, I mean, you just use something special. But it's very good about learning who you are. So if you're willing to lie on yourself, like you're writing a lie and you know it about yourself to yourself, I can't help you. But and don't want to. But but it is good. I think it's good for everyone. It doesn't have to be 300 pages. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It could be 10 pages or anything. But I strongly suggest that you should write about yourself, to yourself, and see where that takes you.
Great advice, Tyrus. Hey, man, thank you. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us today. Thank you to Premier Collectibles for hosting this. The book, of course, is Just Tyrus. He is Just Tyrus. Tyrus, thank you so much for taking the time today. This is really great.
Thank you guys very much.
Hey, this is John Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books and someone who's done a live signing. If you like the one you just watched, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's full of amazing authors having great conversations and signing books for viewers just like you. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks